Today, in a dramatic U-turn, he's admitted to causing the death of 10-year-old Sara Sharif. In a shock admission under cross-examination, he told a jury he takes full responsibility for the death of Sara. He said she died because of me, from beating. I accept every single thing. Today was a bombshell moment at the Old Bailey. Previously, Sharif had denied everything, saying that he'd only slapped Sara. Now he's admitted responsibility towards her death, although he stresses he did not intend to kill her. Until now, Sharif said he was covering for another family member. It's why, he says, he initially confessed to police.
Take a deep breath and tell me what's happened.
I cannot. I physically punished my daughter and she died.
Your daughter has died?
I killed my daughter. I killed my daughter.
How have you killed your daughter?
I beat her up. It wasn't my intention to kill her, but I beat her up too much.
The jury had also seen a note left by Sara's body, written by her father. "I love you, Sara," he wrote. "I'm running away because I'm scared, and I swear to God my intention was not to kill her." Today, Sharif told a jury that at home he would strangle Sara and sometimes hit her with a cricket bat and pole while she was bound up by tape, unable to move, causing the 25 fractures found in her post-mortem, injuries he denied in court last week. Sharif, as well as his wife and brother, are charged with Sara's murder and causing or allowing her death, which they all deny. Sharif's change in tack is a pivotal moment in this trial. He maintains he didn't intend to kill his daughter, but it's the jury who'll decide how culpable he really is. Sabah Chowdhury, Sky News at the Old Bailey.
Let's just bring you some breaking news from the United States. And President-elect Donald Trump has announced that he is nominating Senator Marco Rubio as his Secretary of State. His former political rival, Marco Rubio. He's nominating the Republican senator, saying he will be a strong advocate for our nation, a true friend to our allies, and a fearless warrior who will never back down to our adversaries. A short statement from Donald Trump there. More coming up in the world at 9 o'clock with Gillian Joseph later this evening. To domestic matters now, and the Health Secretary has set out plans for failing hospitals to be named and shamed as part of his plans to fix the health service. Wes Streeting said NHS bosses would be sacked if they can't improve patient care and take control of finances. But health leaders say he should be tackling the root cause of the service's problems instead of trying to find what they called a magic productivity tree. Our health correspondent Laura Bundock has more.
This is his set-piece moment on a stage presenting his plan for NHS reform to some of its senior leaders.
Improving services for patients should be rewarded, and the quid pro quo is that there will be no more rewards for failure. The work you do couldn't be more serious. When you get it right, lives are saved. When you don't, the consequences can be tragic. If performance dips, I reserve the right to take those freedoms away. And for those judged to be persistently failing, we will act.
His audience listened carefully. They need to. Their trusts will be pitted against each other in new league tables, and that's worrying some.
So I think what we have to recognise is that you really need to support improvement and support performance. And the question has to be asked, are league tables the way to do that? Or is it encouraging greater collaboration across systems?
So do you think a league table will do that?
I think it's going to be difficult.
And beyond the conference, there are other concerns.
Another profound problem with performance tables is that they can create a culture of target chasing, and that could lead to a cover-up of bad news, and that would be bad news for patient safety.
It's also what caused the scandal at Stafford Hospital. Staff under pressure to meet targets put lives at risk. Julie Bailey campaigned after her mother died from poor care.
As soon as I heard the announcement, I thought straight away, you know, we could be on the next back to mid-staffs. The conditions we had that created mid-staffs, where we hide things and we think we've got good hospitals, but really we haven't.
Wes Streeting insists patients are at the heart of his reform. He knows where he's heading, but he'll need the support of NHS staff to guarantee success. Laura Bundock, Sky News, Liverpool.
Well, President-elect of the Society for Acute Medicine, Dr Vicky Price, joins me now to discuss some of the plans Wes Streeting announced tonight. And league tables has gathered most of the headlines. Are they a good idea, do you think?
I'm afraid we've got grave concerns within the Society for Acute Medicine about the league table nature of these reforms. The naming and shaming and almost sort of putting naughty hospitals on the naughty step is what's concerning us. Hospitals don't work in isolation. So if you are going to be blaming hospitals for not performing as well, when actually they have limited control over social services and that sort of thing, it's just not going to work. So, for example, one of the biggest problems we have within acute medicine and the emergency floor really is when patients are coming into hospital, there's no room. And a lot of the time that's because we've got patients in hospital who are medically fit for discharge. But the individual hospitals have no control over that. So how are they going to improve that if they can't improve that? So we just really need some more support for those hospitals. And it's the bigger picture that we're worried about.
But what about transparency and accountability? Wes Streeting saying, you know, if these hospitals don't creep up the league tables, if we don't see a more level playing field when it comes to NHS trusts and hospitals, bosses will be sacked.
So it's really important to have transparency, and I think there's been lots and lots of work done over the years to really improve that. Transparency is incredibly important. But this isn't just about transparency. This is about hospitals that are struggling. And instead of sort of applying penalties to these trusts, we need to actually be supporting them and understanding why they're struggling. And I think that's what's worrying us, is that actually I can't see how that's going to happen and what the nature of these reforms will be. And I think you've picked this up beautifully in the report that's already been done, is this sort of short-term target chasing for people to improve. That doesn't necessarily lead to improvement. What that sometimes leads to is, on the face of it, figures looking better, but sometimes what's going on behind the scenes to try and make those figures look better aren't, and it's certainly not helping patient care.
Well, you touched on it beautifully and rather subtly there. I'll put it in more stark terms. You talk about hospitals trying to improve, but also hospitals trying to cheat the league tables, because Laura Bundock there, our correspondent, used the example of Stafford Hospital, which was accused of, you know, cover-ups essentially, because staff were so desperate to hit goals. They chose to do that to look good rather than actually focus on patient care and accountability.
Yeah, and we see that every day. So, you know, the 4-hour target is something that we haven't hit for many years, but that's a great example. So if you've got patients that, on the face of it, it's a great idea to get a patient through the system really quickly. So get them out of A&E within 4 hours. That's the target. But actually what can happen is that people can just move those patients into a less suitable area. They're off the clock. It looks great, but actually we're not helping patients at all. In fact, patient care deteriorates. So when you're setting these metrics, you've got to be really careful, because the hospital system is complicated, isn't it? If you put all your efforts into one area, what's going to happen to the other areas? And that's what really worries us about this. I think it's great that we want to do the right thing. We want to improve the NHS. We all do. But we've really got to be careful. And talking about league tables and, you know, bad hospitals getting sent, you know, punished for it, that doesn't ring true, especially with a staff that are on their knees and already struggling. And those hospitals, of course, how are they going to retain and recruit staff when they're at the bottom of a league table? There's so much complexity to this. It needs a bit more thought, I think, I'm afraid.
Dr Price, are you quite frustrated in terms of, you know, Wes Streeting's only been in the role a couple of months now, and yes, fixing the NHS is a gargantuan task, but When they were elected into government, Labour said they did have a plan. We're still waiting for the details of that. They say it's coming. There is a plan. They will reveal that. But in the meantime, you've got announcements about league tables. And I know, anecdotally, listening to some people as I travelled in today on the radio, were just saying, why are you announcing this? What good's it going to do? We want to see actual, real, tangible plans to fix the problems that are making these hospitals slip down league tables. We'll have more of that, please. Less of this. You're wasting time.
Yeah, it is frustrating, and I think for all of us that work sort of within the NHS, and you go to work, and it's quite hard because we want to deliver the best care for patients, but instead what we're seeing is it's hard to do our job because the system is so inefficient. I have a huge amount of sympathy with the government and the health service, because to fix this is not going to be easy, and some of the things that Wes Streeting was saying in his report made a lot of sense. We do need to improve things, and we do need to cut down waiting times, and we do need to help with that. We also need to make sure the money is going to the right place. But at the same time, I think we just need to watch the language a little bit, and naming and shaming and punishing. I would say that's not the way to go forward. I say supporting staff, helping, working out where the problems are will get us a lot further forward.
Yeah, I think everybody's quite clear about what needs to be done and what is wrong. Some people will say we don't need league tables to tell us, you know, how bad some hospitals have been performing. You only need to do a quick Google to find that out if you're a patient. But it's the how. The how we fix the NHS is the really hard question to answer. And there are so many different layers to the answer. If you were to sort of look at the NHS and look at the huge task ahead and what can be tackled easily and quickly, is there such a thing that the government can do to make short-term gain? Because, I mean, this is a long-term plan, but the NHS needs help now. I mean, we're in this winter period, this crucial winter period, aren't we? It's here already.
It is indeed. And I think my colleagues and I are talking about a 10-year plan. We need a 10-day plan.
Yeah.
And to get things fixed quickly for our patients who are coming in and having corridor care, which is, we know it's associated with increased mortality, and it's terrible. So the one thing I would say needs tackling quickly, and I do feel like can be done, is, and I'm afraid I'm repeating myself slightly, but when we have patients that are in hospital that are medically fit for discharge, who would be much better in their own homes or in the community, and instead they're in hospital, which means then when new patients come in, we have nowhere for them to go. That is the first thing that I would look at, and trying to get those patients out of hospital in a safe way, and look at that and put the funding there first, so we can really free up that capacity to allow patients to come through, offload them from the ambulance and get them seen by the people that they need to see quicker. That's certainly the sort of the first thing that I think we could do, and I think we could do that fairly quickly, and I would prefer to concentrate on that rather than sort of league tables and naming and shaming. Hospitals don't work in isolation, so, you know, a lot of these problems that hospitals have, there's not a lot they can fix if those problems are related to social care. Sometimes hospitals are in areas of social deprivation where you really need a lot more support. So looking at that, looking at the mental health patients as well, there's lots and lots of fixes in the system that we really could do with identifying, certainly in myself and my colleagues' view, rather than naming and shaming.
Dr. Vicky Price, President-elect of the Society for Acute Medicine, thank you so much for your contribution this evening. Really appreciate it. Meanwhile, the Health Secretary has ordered a review into the cost of implementing the assisted dying bill, should it become law. Wes Streeting has already voiced his opposition to the proposals, but he's now suggesting that other NHS services could be cut to fund the changes. And let's bring in our chief political correspondent, John Craig. And John, we have been talking about the assisted dying bill a lot in recent months, but the cost of it hasn't really been discussed, perhaps, until now.
Well, this was one of two very significant developments today. Tonight, Mr Streeting has said that now that we've seen the bill published, and here it is, all 59 pages of it, I've asked my department, he said, to look at the cost that would be associated with providing a new service to enable assisted dying to go forward. And then he said, any new service comes at the expense of other competing pressures and priorities. Now, this will alarm supporters of the bill, who will say it's Mr Streeting, who is an opponent of the bill, trying to find obstacles to try and persuade MPs, perhaps who are worried about health spending, not to vote for the bill when it comes before MPs on the 29th of November. Speaking in the past hour here on Sky News, the Health Minister Karen Smith told Sophie Ridge it's not a review as such, but it's a piece of analysis. Nevertheless, the Health Secretary has felt the need to make this announcement today. Now, earlier, we had from the Prime Minister at PMQs a pretty flat rejection of a call from a fairly senior Tory MP, that's Sir Alex Shelbrooke, for more time to debate the bill. This was the exchange in Prime Minister's questions at the very last question, when Sir Alex Shelbrooke said, look, it's a big bill, there's a lot in it, and we need more time than just one day, a Friday afternoon debate, which is when private members' bills are debated. We need more time. This was his question, and here's the Prime Minister's reply.
Know that there are strongly held views on both sides of the debate across this House, and that's why it will be a free vote. I think every member needs to decide for themselves how they will vote on it. It's a free vote. I do think there's sufficient time allocated to it, but it is an important issue.
So, there's sufficient time allocated to it, said the Prime Minister. Mr Streeting asked about the Prime Minister, his views. He said the PM is clearly studying the bill before deciding on his own position. Now, last time there was a vote on this, a few years back, Sir Keir voted in favour. It was heavily defeated then, but there is a suspicion that perhaps the government is turning against this bill, and supporters of the bill being put forward by Kim Letby, the Labour MP, are concerned that support for the bill may be declining slightly as we approach that important debate. 29th of November, this is it. It is a big bill for a private member's bill, and that's a point that some have made. And there may be attempts to talk it out and all sorts of those parliamentary shenanigans we see with private members' bills on a Friday afternoon. So, things are not looking quite so good for supporters of the assisted dying bill tonight for two reasons. One, a look into the finances, and second, a rejection of calls for more time to debate it.
John, thank you. John Craig live for us in Westminster. Well, the Health Secretary's been really busy today. He's also been talking about hospices, something we've been talking about this week. We brought you a special report on the financial strain that are facing hospices in England, not helped by the rise in the minimum wage and national insurance contributions that are coming. Some hospices are considering withdrawing services. Some are even at the risk of closure. Well, the government has been under considerable pressure to guarantee funding, and today, Wes Streeting said he will be making an announcement before Christmas. My colleague Sophie Ridge, a little earlier, spoke to Health Minister Karen Smythe on the Politics Hub in the past hour.
They are a lifeline for so many people, and it's important that they are supported. And as the Health Secretary has said, that we are obviously looking at that. He hopes to be able to announce any further measures on that before Christmas. We know the budget's hard.
Can you just promise hospices?
I can't promise that now. I can't promise exactly what that will look like now. We know they're an important part of the landscape of care for people. We know that's true of GPs and primary care. We know this budget's really difficult. The population knows that. The Chancellor's had to make some really difficult choices.
Well, let's speak now to the Chief Executive of Forget-Me-Nots Children Hospice, Gareth Pearce. He was with me here in the studio on Monday, and he joins me again this evening from Huddersfield. Good to see you again. And when we spoke, the next day you were going to Parliament to speak to MPs about this crisis in hospice care. We'll come on to the detail of that in just a moment, but I just want to get a sense of how you felt when you heard the Health Secretary address this issue finally today. No real details, but you will get something before Christmas, we're told.
Yeah, I think it's a huge step forward, isn't it? I mean, we still need to see the detail of what that is going to look like, but I'm sure that there'll be hospices up and down the country who'll be breathing a little bit of a sigh of relief that it should relieve a little bit of pressure. But I think until we see what the detail is and how things are actually going to roll out, it's very difficult to say what it will hold at this moment in time.
Yeah, I've been looking at what he said earlier on today. It was very short and sweet, as you said, not much detail yet. He talked about extra support, not an exemption, because I know that hospices are asking for an exemption from the national insurance rise. And he said he was going to change the government grant to make sure we are protecting our hospices. Those details are to come before Christmas. Just remind viewers what this grant is, because you're actually waiting on news for funding for next year. You're trying to plan a budget to run a hospice next year, but you haven't got any figures to play with because the government haven't told you yet.
Yeah, that's right. So the grant that he's talking about will be the £25 million NHS England Children's Hospice Grant, which is a grant that supports children's hospices across the whole country. It isn't there to sort of underpin services, but it certainly does help us to deliver those services. And for hospices like us at Forget Me Not Children's Hospice, it's a huge part of our funding. It's 10% of our overall funding, and it makes up the majority of the funding we receive from statutory sources. So for us, it's absolutely critical. And the event that we attended yesterday in Parliament was all about pressing for that grant to remain, and not only for it to remain and for us to find out urgently if it is going to remain next year, but also to press for it to be centrally distributed as opposed to it going through local healthcare resources, and then also for it to increase and be more sustainable and regular over time, at least in line with inflation and increasing pressures. So I think it's welcome news that it sounds like that is going to be here for next year. But again, we still need that confirmation as to what that's going to look like and whether there is a long-term permanent solution, and not just another one-off plug that is going to help us get through the next year.
Yeah, talk to me about that event. Where are we? It's Wednesday, that happened yesterday when you went to Parliament. Because essentially, those events, you go, you get a room in the Houses of Parliament, and you invite MPs in. It's a bit like an open house. Come in, we want to tell you about our issue. Let us tell you about the hospice. So, MPs come in, you talk to them. What kind of things were they saying to you? What kind of things were you saying to them to press the urgency of this?
Yeah, so throughout the day, there was a number of hospices represented at that event alongside Together for Short Lives, who obviously were on the programme along with myself earlier on this week. And throughout the day, we had around 40 MPs from up and down the country that came in to spend time with us to understand more about the impact of the grant potentially being pulled, and what it means to hospices up and down the country. But also we asked the MPs that attended to sign an open letter that supported further action on the grant as we've been describing. I think there was a mixture of conversations, and I think they were all positive. I think it increased understanding and helped us to really table the conversation. And then there was a round table event where we were actually able to sit with the Parliamentary Private Secretary to the Department of Health and Social Care, who was there representing the government. And I think at that point, we were really clearly able to table our concerns. And to be fair, he did acknowledge those concerns and acknowledge the need for urgent action. And that was really good. It was we were able to table it. We were able to put those concerns across loud and clear. And I think the urgent sort of call from hospices in the room was that sense of certainty and urgency in that we need to know as soon as possible this year what's happening, and then after that what the long-term funding solution is for hospices, which of course needs to be part of that long-term 10-year plan for the NHS.
Yeah, Christmas can't come soon enough for you guys, literally and figuratively. Gareth, thank you so much. Chief Executive of Forget Me Not Children's Hospice, Gareth Pearce there. We'll speak again soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Still to come on the UK tonight. A royal reception for some of Hollywood's biggest stars. We'll have the latest from the Gladiator premiere in central London.
First Minister, how are you?
Good morning. Good morning.
Nice to see you. How are you feeling?
Looking forward to getting into the parliamentary chamber.
Are you any further forward to making a decision?
No, it's an important day today.
All of the claims were in line with my parliamentary duties, so I'm making that clear to you, Connor.
He was a Scot through and through.
He was a very good politician.
Alex Salmond was controversial, he was a disruptor, but above all, he was respected.
Will you resign if you lose this week?
Again, I'm not planning to, of course, lose the vote of no confidence. I'm planning to win that vote of no confidence.
His face said it all.
My intention to stand down as party leader.
This is now a storm with deadly consequences. How are they feeling?
They're a bit scared at the minute.
We've been told to evacuate.
How are you feeling?
Devastated.
Hundreds of homes were wiped out by flooding. I'm Connor Gillis, Sky's Scotland correspondent.
It was probably the darkest time in my life.
Scott is 5 years sober after a cocaine addiction left him close to death. Scotland has a shameful record, worse than England, the worst in Europe.
Why not just say you've failed? Because then you might get more respect from families who've lost loved ones.
This is where one of the UK's most prolific rapists thought he'd got away with murder.
Sky News can reveal that former sex workers had told police he was sexually violent.
My Emma.
Free wherever you get your news.
It's over, isn't it?
The Americans say he is Rossi, a fraudster.
This has been one of the most bizarre cases ever heard in a courtroom in this country.
A dangerous murderer.
Do you think you'll ever be able to forgive Andrew Ennis after this?
She said she can forgive him, but as long as he's behind bars.
By doing the right thing, it's destroyed your life.
They terrorised me. They intimidated me.
Sky News, the full story first.
Play Sky News.
From the Sky News Centre at 7.
Now that you're up to date, we can go into a bit more detail.
Things can change incredibly quickly.
Taken by surprise.
Have you ever known a moment like this in British politics before? Yes. Cheers. We'll start with breaking news.
Let's get the latest on the ground.
So, by the end, we'll hopefully all understand what's going on in the world just that little better.
The King has been hosting the UK's film and television industry at a Buckingham Palace reception today for a star-studded night out on the town with some of Hollywood's biggest names. King Charles is attending the Gladiator II premiere in central London, sitting down with the film's stars and director Sir Ridley Scott. Our arts and entertainment correspondent Katie Spencer was there too and has this report from the red carpet.
24 years after Sir Ridley Scott's Roman blockbuster, a solo cinema outing for the King, meeting the sequel's stars. Would Paul Mescal get an up or down-turned thumb from His Majesty?
I think I'm excited to play with what an audience is expecting of me. And this is... I'm struggling with words at the moment because this has been an absolutely wildly... I keep using the word overwhelming, but I think if this isn't slightly overwhelming, I don't know what the hell is. I'm having a great time.
Ridley Scott. Before the bloody on-screen battles, Buckingham Palace. A royal reception earlier in the day, celebrating those who work within the UK TV and film industry. Power struggles playing out on and off screen at the moment, as smaller indie films struggle to find funding, with fewer films getting made and budgets being drastically squeezed.
We've had a few years where there's been a lack of support, whether intentional or unintentional. We need all the support we can get because there's a lot of people in our industry who are struggling, and having their support means something.
This is about survival!
Gladiator II, the other extreme, with an actual scale model of the Colosseum built for this, flooded with water at one stage, huge costs and a lot of hype surrounding this legacy sequel.
The production that went into making Gladiator II is extraordinary. If the rumours are true, it's hardly surprising that this ran way over budget, some saying by around 100 million. But that matters not, because behind the scenes, predictive analysis into current tastes and trends means the powers that be are confident that this will be the blockbuster to get us off our sofas and into cinemas.
Not that filmmaker Sir Ridley Scott listens to those computers.
Any film of that scale, it doesn't matter how we play it down, is colossally stressful. You better embrace stress, otherwise don't do the job.
The greatest temple Rome ever built, the Colosseum.
A standout performance from Denzel Washington in a role so brilliantly Machiavellian, it might just win him his 3rd Oscar. While Paul Mescal might have bulked up, some critics say the storylines could have done with feeding more. Either way, Gladiator II is pretty much guaranteed to be a hit. Good news for cinemas as they continue to fight for pre-pandemic audience numbers. To quote the original, "Are you not entertained?" Katie Spencer, Sky News.
Still to come on the UK tonight, the bereaved families coming together to produce a series of educational films about knife crime. And a consultant paediatrician who worked in the same hospital as Lucy Letby says he should have voiced his concerns sooner. We'll have the latest from the Thirlwall inquiry. Bereaved families have come together to help produce a series of films to try and educate school children about knife crime. The virtual reality experience, which is hosted by the actor Ralph Little, takes children into a police custody suite and a mortuary visiting room in the hope of sparking honest conversations about the country's knife crime epidemic. One of the driving forces behind the project is the Matthew Dalby Foundation. Matthew was stabbed to death in July last year. Earlier, I spoke to his mum, Angela, and his brother, Tom, and I began by asking them what made them get involved.
Obviously, the impact on the family, it's devastating. It's something that you never can comprehend or imagine. In the video, it's the second section of the video, you actually see 3 interviews, me doing one of them, basically just questioning our experiences. It takes you through, well, my personal experience and what happened that night when we got the call at 2 o'clock in the morning to go down to the hospital, and you don't realise until it actually happens what that effect will have on you, your family, everyone surrounding Matthew's friends. We got a call at 2, we went down to the hospital, and then you get taken into like this back room, and straight away you're thinking, what's going on here? Why are we special? Why are we going into a random room with no one in? And then the chief sergeant comes in, and the trauma surgeon sits you down and says, you know, your brother's died, he's been killed. It's something that it scars you for life. So yeah, it's been an emotional, but I hope through the educational videos that were formed and Mr. Little's made, that hopefully we can nip it in the bud as soon as possible. Because I was reading some figures before. In 2021, 26,000 people were seriously injured or killed through knife crime. That figure in 2023 was almost double to 50,000. So it's definitely on the up, but I feel like if we can at least get one person in every school year to go back home, put the knife back, don't take that knife out, then we've done our jobs and we're saving lives without them people even knowing that we're saving their lives. So yeah.
These videos cover some very uncomfortable truths about knife crime, details that perhaps children are not privy to. And, you know, it talks about the bravado and status of carrying a knife. It talks about who can carry a knife. It's not just young lads, it can be girls, it can be straight A students. And it talks about the culture, like mates egging other kids on to carry a knife. But there was a really poignant bit in one of the videos where the air ambulance crew say, you know, when we land 10 minutes after something like this has happened, their mates are gone. They're nowhere to be seen. You know, we talked to the trauma surgeon in the video, and the trauma surgeon says these so-called mates leave these kids, stabbed kids, at the door of the hospital and do a runner. And it's these kind of messages that really can cut through to children, perhaps, Angela.
No, I definitely agree, Sarah. I think it's really, really important. I think that it's very easy for lots and lots of young people to get together and say, oh, let's do this, and, you know, it'd be really good to do that. They don't actually realise what that actually means. And that is the really good thing that the videos show. It shows them that, you know, you can be the big I am, you can be you can be part of a gang, you can be part of a group. But ultimately, that decision you make to carry that knife is life-changing for families. It's life-changing for siblings, it's life-changing for aunties, uncles, grandparents, but it's also life-changing for them as well, and their families. That decision they make on that night to carry a knife will live with so many people for so long, including the emergency services who have to pick this up at the point of when they receive a person in there, and the people that have to tell their heartbroken family, who we were just hoping for the best news possible. Somebody had to tell us that our 19-year-old child had been murdered by a knife, and that must stay with them as well. So this has the decision they make on that night to carry a knife affects so many people, and the video actually demonstrates that really, really well.
Tell me about Matthew, Tom, tell me about your brother, because we talk about the impact of knife crime, and you two are sitting there with the loss of a bright young man, somebody who walked out the door and was looking forward to a trip to Ibiza and just didn't come home that night. And his life was cut short. He's missed out on so much. Tell me what he was like. What was he like as a brother?
He was one of a kind, to be fair. Funny, cheeky, done everything that he wanted to do. But he was also really caring, which you didn't actually notice. There's been so many people that have come up to my mum and said, did you know that he done this on the side and helped us out? And my mum was like, no, we didn't hear that once from him. But we were glued to the hips. He was like typical brothers. We argued, no doubt about it. We argued all the time. Mostly about lifts. I drive, he doesn't drive, so obviously when whenever he needs a lift, he'd ring me. I'd normally always say no, but then about 2 minutes later, I'd ring him and say, where are you then? How come I pick you up? And he knew how to work me, knew exactly how to work me. But yeah, he was funny, very funny, loving person, and obviously I miss him dearly, but I won't forget him. I'll always remember what he was, and what he always will be.
When you're so devastated and something so precious is taken away, the only thing you can do is protect somebody else from going through that. And we very, very quickly decided that we wanted to do something. We didn't want Matthew to die in vain, and we wanted to help people from never, ever experiencing, as a family, what we've had to experience. And that's the aim of the Matthew Dolby Foundation.
Well, Angela and Tom, thank you so much for talking to us about Matthew and the work that you're doing in his name. Those videos are so powerful, and like I said, just giving us some of the stark, harsh detail involved in knife crime and the fallout from knife crime that people perhaps don't get to hear or see, and hope they never do. But it's really hard-hitting, and I know that you think so many young people should see it as a deterrent. So thank you for coming on to talk to us about it. Thank you.
That's right. I think one other point, Sarah, that I think is really, really important. Knife crime can happen to anybody. It can happen to anybody. People think that knife crime happens because young people are in a gang. That is not the case. Matthew was not part of a gang. He was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. And he was attacked and killed within 1 minute. He was attacked from behind, and that's how quickly and devastating knife crime can actually be.
Well, a huge thank you to Angela and Tom Dolby for speaking to us here on the UK Tonight. A consultant paediatrician who worked in the same hospital as Lucy Letby has told the inquiry into her crimes that he should have had more courage in raising concerns. Letby is serving 15 whole-life sentences for the murders of 7 babies and attempted murders of 7 others at the Countess of Chester Hospital. Here's our North of England correspondent, Shingi Marike.
Today we heard from Dr. Ravi Jayaram, who is one of the most significant witnesses we've heard from in the inquiry so far. He was the lead consultant on the neonatal unit at the Countess of Chester Hospital over the course of that time period where Lucy Letby committed those 7 murders and 7 attempted murders, for which she is serving 15 whole life orders. And Dr. Jayaram began his evidence today with an apology to the families before he was then questioned by the counsel to the inquiry about a number of issues, from safeguarding to protocols around the sudden death of children in hospitals. And then in perhaps the most revealing moment of the morning, he spoke about child K, a baby that was born prematurely and began to stabilise on the neonatal unit in February 2016. He spoke about how Lucy Letby was on the ward when child K had a sudden collapse, and about his feelings and emotions that day, and the beginning of his concerns around Lucy Letby, and also his regret around not showing more courage. This is what he had to say about that.
Because it's such an seemingly outlandish and unlikely thing that someone is causing deliberate harm. It's the fear of not being believed. It's, you said to me, why didn't you just stand up and tell everyone what you thought had happened? It's the fear of not being believed. It's the fear of ridicule. It's the fear of accusations of bullying. I wonder, and I will never know, if I'd articulated that concern at that point, would it have made a difference? I should have been braver. I should have had more courage, because it wasn't just an isolated thing. There was already a lot of other information.
So over the course of the afternoon, Dr. Jayaram became more and more emotional as he spoke about the courage that he said he hadn't shown, and also apologised to the family at the end of the day when being questioned by the lawyers representing them. And this is part B of the inquiry, which is looking at the behaviour and actions of hospital staff while Lucy Letby was working at the Countess of Chester Hospital. And we know that the inquiry is due to sit until January 2025 before producing its final report in autumn 2025.
Coming up on the UK Tonight, Dine Another Day, Daniel Craig steps in to help save a community hub from closure. And Harry Kane hits out at his England teammates for dropping out of this week's Nations League camp. We'll have the latest on that for you.
welcome to the world.
Our new podcast, starting now. It's very exciting. Every week, we'll be reporting from the world's trouble spots.
We get to hold those in positions of power accountable, and we get to ask the questions that the audience, the listeners, want to know about.
And that's why it is so important that people tune in, come along for the road, come along for the journey. It'll be fun.
I'm Stuart Ramsey, and I'm Sky's chief correspondent.
An enormous explosion. It's just come down. I think it was a monster just landed in between us.
Hundreds and hundreds of people hoping to get north, ultimately to get to the United States.
It's a border where they're not welcome, yet they keep coming.
We saw snatch squads going in, grabbing people, taking them out and putting them into trucks and taking them away.
They make about 50 kilos of fentanyl a week. It's incredibly dangerous and toxic stuff.
There's been an upsurge in deaths. The fighting between the gangs is getting more and more vicious.
Is this now all your territory?
Yeah.
The battlefield is outside the barricades, which is over there. This is much more like a normal town. It's really sending a clear message that Venezuela is eager for change.
We've been crushed. Free from wherever you get your news. We are in the middle of a forest, in a jungle really, and they're attempting to keep these men alive. This is real, hardcore emergency medicine. The information on this could bring down the entire network, not just in Iraq and Syria, but across the world. Sky News, the full story first.
Hundreds of thousands of people have been using the beast for years to traverse Mexico, but it is really dangerous. Many people have died riding it.
Hello, welcome back. Coming up, how Daniel Craig has helped a local community hub to dine another day. Teddy is here with the sport. Glad you laughed at that, thank you. Yeah. I've said it so many times throughout the course of the programme, okay, no one in my ear is laughing anymore, so I'm glad that you are. Right, let's talk about England. They're playing Greece tomorrow, and Harry Kane's been talking about his teammates, and he's a bit upset with them.
Yes,
what's it all about?
Give people a bit of context, really surreal situation. Harry Kane, of course, a record goal scorer for his country, 101 caps, has often been accused of playing with injuries for England in the past, criticised for that, but he certainly hasn't shirked responsibility. But this one in the background of the fact that Thomas Tuchel, the permanent manager, doesn't take over till January, so Lee Carsley's swung as interim manager. Been 8 withdrawals before initially. Jared Branthwaite is one of the call-ups, is now gone, so there's 9 people withdrawn from the stadium. Harry Kane just not happy. Everyone may have a good excuse, but he's had this to say, that he thinks the country should come first.
Yeah, look, I think it's a tough period of the season, and maybe, maybe there's been taken advantage of that a little bit. I don't really like it, if I'm totally honest. I think, like I just said there, I think England comes before anything, any club situation now. You know, we have a really tough game away from home on Thursday.
That's what Harry Kane said. I bet the journalist couldn't wait to ask Lee Carsley a question about it at the pre-match press conference, which has happened. What did he say?
Yeah, obviously it wasn't probably great to have that awkward question, but he was adamant that this happened before in this November break. A lot of football's played at this time for a lot of club players, and just would say there's not been a hit or an impact on the squad spirit.
Definitely not. I think... you know, with the amount of pull-outs that we've had in this window, it's you know, historically it's been like that in the past. November's always been a challenging window. I think like you said, the culture and the environment that Gareth and Steve and the rest of the staff created has made it a really positive environment, and the players that are currently here fully deserve to be here.
Yeah, so England really have to win that game tomorrow night in Athens against Greece. Greece winning at Wembley in the last international break. So to win this Nations League group, get back up to the top tier, that looks a vital game for them. Huge game for Chelsea's women and Celtic women's tonight. They're meeting at Celtic Park. Update you on that in just a second.
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality. Getting more people more active. Live life with Vitality.
firstly, how do you reflect on the decision that England made to retire you effectively earlier on this year?
Yeah, obviously I've made peace with it now. A lot of time's passed, but it was tough at the time. You know, I was coming into that summer thinking I still had a lot to give, a lot to offer the team. I still felt I was fit and playing well. So when it did come as quite a shock at first, but yeah, I feel like I'm the sort of person that probably would have kept playing till I was 50 if I possibly could. So if they obviously want to look ahead to the future, which I'm obviously fine with, and it was nice that they wanted to keep me around the team as well, and I've enjoyed being part of the setup in a slightly different role.
And you asked if you could play one final test at Old Trafford. Is there a disappointment that you weren't able to do that?
No, not really. I think, again, a lot of time's passed since that my last Test match, so I was delighted that I got to play at Lord's. I don't think a lot of people get that opportunity sometimes to go out like that and have that one last moment, and to have the crowd and you know the team around me and my family there as well.
This Sky News Sports Bulletin is brought to you by Vitality.
Visitors to a community hub in Gloucestershire, which has served almost 40,000 meals, will dine another day after a £50,000 donation from the actor Daniel Craig. The James Bond actor stepped in to help secure Brimscombe Mill's future after the building was unexpectedly sold and the hub faced eviction. As well as they pay if you can restaurants, it's also home to a furniture bank, a bike repair service and a second-hand children's clothes store. It really is a community hub in every sense of the word. Well, I'm pleased to say the director of the hub, Tom Herbert, joins me now. Hello, Tom.
Hi.
Well, this is quite a remarkable story, so I'm so pleased that you've come on to talk to us about it. We need a bit of good news. What sort of point were you at with the community hub? Because your premises have been sold and you faced eviction, so talk to me about the situation you were facing.
Well, it'd been our home for about 3 years. We'd worked in the Golden Valley, Brimscombe, for nearly a decade. And so there's a lot of people we have that rely on where we are for work. We employ over 50 people. And so many of the community rely on what we offer for just life being good and helping meet needs. And so when we were told we had to move out, we had nowhere to go, and it really was rock bottom for us. The word went out that we were being moved out and we had nowhere to go to, and the community just rallied around us with this like loud, no, this can't happen. And word got out and spread further and further afield. And I guess Daniel Craig must have heard and responded.
I love that. £50,000. This has pulled you back from the brink. How did you find out that he donated so much money?
Well, we got an email just out of the blue. He, like I said, I don't know how he found out, but he heard, and it really has been a lifeline for us. Yeah, that was about 7 months ago, and since then, a generous family have stepped forward and they've purchased the mill so we can stay forever. And without that financial injection of cash, like a war chest for us, we wouldn't have been able to stay. So we're indebted to him. He's welcome to come and eat with us at the long table anytime. I've invited him already.
Have you? I was going to say, have you invited him down to dine with you? Because I can imagine you could probably tempt him by selling the film rights as well. This is quite a remarkable story.
Thanks. Yeah, we're amazed to find ourselves, you know, part of this thing that's become much bigger than us. And people are coming in from all over to see what is all the fuss about. Why would James Bond or, you know, Daniel Craig, obviously is much more than that role, do the heroic thing and step in and save us.
Sticking true to the 007 persona, he didn't explain his reasons for it, did he? He just sort of decided to give you that offer and leave it as that. And I'm quite interested to your reaction when you first got that email, because, you know, Daniel Craig, of course, the actor springs to mind, but there might be some other Daniel Craigs out there. And we all know about scam emails these days. Did you quite believe it when it happened?
Well, Well, we did believe it because we just thought, well, that would be a really sick joke. You know, we were desperate.
Got 50 grand to give someone.
Yeah, that would be. So it was sort of strange, so strange you couldn't make it up. We have a cardboard cutout of him. We already had it. So that got brought out of a wardrobe. That's been in our office. Various people have kissed it. I mean, you know, we're just... We're so grateful that he somehow heard about our plight and literally rescued us like the true hero he is. And not only that, but it like saying, oh yeah, Daniel Craig has helped us out, kind of affirmed that this was something that's worth saving. Now already the Stroud Sisterhood group, over 3,000 women signed an open letter pleading with the landlord to let us stay. The local MP, Bishop Rachel, got involved. So many friends of the Long Table, of which there's like 420 and growing all the time.
Daniel Craig was just the name that got you over the line. There were so many people behind this, and Daniel Craig was just the one that got it over the line for you, and that wonderful family that came forward to buy the premises for you. Well, look, Tom, here's to many more decades in your original home, Brinscombe Mill. Founder there of the Long Table restaurant, and as you said, so much more goes out there, the real heart of the community there. Congratulations to you. Good news story to end the programme on. Thank you, Tom.
Thanks.
Well, that's all from us. We are back tomorrow night at 8 o'clock. Up next, it's The World with Gillian Joseph. We'll see you tomorrow.